Hey everybody, very excited to be here. So today we're gonna talk about the terms that probably we have ever heard anywhere if you are working on AI, which is AI demo hell. Essentially, it's a just a term for you're developing an AI product, but it got stuck in the prototype instead of going to production. And today we're gonna talk about specifically how to escape that kind of demo hell, essentially, which is the promise and the challenges of LLM evaluation. And before diving into that, let me just quickly intro myself. And yeah, my name is Albert. I'm a co-founder and CTO at a AI-driven freight automation and intelligence company called Forward Labs. And prior to that, I also used to work at a couple of Y Combinator companies from zero, which is pre-revenue, pre-product, to a unicorn company, which is 1 billion in valuation. And on top of that, I also quite active in a AI community by publishing an article about AI, how can we adopt AI faster, and also to also active in an open source AI community, and also data development. So for today's goal, we're gonna talk about four different things. The first one is why evaluation is important. The second one, the principles when it comes to performing a decent evaluation. And the third one, how can we run the experiments? Um, and the fourth one is essentially what kind of tools are available for us to run the experiments with the evaluation principles that we've going to talk about today. So first thing first, let's start with my favorite quote, which is from Albert Einstein, which is insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. Unfortunately for LLMs or for AI, it seems to be different because when you repeat exactly the same prompts like hundreds of times to LLM, like Claude, Cursor, OpenAI, or any types of AI tools that you're trying to do, it might return you a different result. So basically, in order to develop an AI product, traditional AI development will not work. And this is an example of what um, AI demo hell looks like, which is the left side you can see like do not pay, like promise AI lawyers, like AI lawyers are coming for your consumers, etc., etc. But in reality, there's still a probability of for the truth that the AI product is not working as expected as we wanted. And the example here is like do not pay got fined by FTC because there is a there's a consumers misled by the AI performance here. And even for big companies or even for Fortune 500 companies, fall into AI demo hell. The example here is for Air Canada. They have to pay for the damages for the for inaccurate chatbot answer. And also in Amazon, for example, they try to develop an AI enabled recruitment tools, but somehow there's still a really, really huge bias in terms of like evaluating the principles. So here is the real cause of prom hell or demo hell. Um, it's a bit different from traditional AI development where um, the debugging process is a bit um, tricky, and also fixing one issues like for example if you want to change a prompt, your new prompt might create three more maybe problems without evaluation, and basically the values will be cascaded to the entire systems. And here is the evaluation principles we want to focus on today. There are two core things here, which is the first one is to understand what customers wanted, understand what actually the problems are, and understand what matters so for designing a solution. And the second one, I think we know that there's a lot of AI tools available in the market. There's Cursor for coding, for example. There's Cursor, there's Claude, there's Laughable, etc., etc. But fundamentally, what's important is not to chase a new shiny tools every now and then, but basically you have to define the process, define the foundation of your AI development here. Before diving into that, I just wanted to give you a glimpse of the typical day-to-day life of an AI engineer here. Yeah, as you can see it here, for example, the typical problem is retrieval not working. And the solution is try just instead of going into the process, usually the default answer will be A, let's try a new vector database. Another example, like fine tuning for a model for like a vertical specific solution. But I think the default answer or the default comment for that kind of approach is it will probably help. Maybe yes, maybe no. Or maybe we can just swap the model into a newer model, and it doesn't guarantee that the accuracy or the outcome that you want would be much, much better. So when it comes to understand what matters for the customers, um, I think the core message here is to not just blindly following metrics that are available in the market and not just blindly more metrics doesn't mean better customer impact. So for example here, I think to understand more about it, we have to understand the step by step to understand what matters for the customers, which is step one. I think we have to identify who are the customers, who are the users of our system, and what's the objective for from the customer point of view. The second and the third one is more about once we understand the goal, what does the success look like, and how to identify a meaningful metrics to basically measure the customer impact here. And last but not least, looking at your data, because data is the foundation of everything in AI. So this is an example of identifying the customer goal. So the common trap here is, I think most AI teams are obsessing over like a benchmark, public benchmark, like a perplexity, like a recall, etc., etc., which is um, that might be true in certain conditions, but a better approach is instead of just following the available metrics, as I think an example here is sales technology company. I think we should shift from building a perfect call summaries into identifying buying objection with 95% recall. So it's measurable. There's a difference between 95% versus 96% versus 97%. And there is a goal. Instead of being perfect summary, it's basically perfect call summaries for identifying buying objection. And yeah, I think this is just what I mentioned before. I think what's important is not the number itself. What's important is to understand the difference between 95% versus like 96%, for example. Again, in the data, I don't think we should delegate the data review only to engineers. We should bring in domain expertise here because they are critical to understand why the data matters. This is a perfect example of um, how to identify the customer goal. So, for example, I think the typical example would be precision versus recall. Which one is more important? Ideally, we wanted to get 100% precision, 100% recall, but that's almost impossible in most situations. And anyway, if let's say you got 100% recall and precision, I think that might mean overfit. You are overfitting the model as well. So on the left side, it's a bank. Banks usually care about precision because, of course, it's better to miss a fraud transaction than blocking a valid transaction. So it means that the precision here has to be very, very high. But for the recall itself, it's okay to be less than, for example, like 90%. And on the right side, you can see like a Spotify or YouTube channel. They care more about recall because it's not important. It's less important to be precise here because it's more important to show um, as many movies as possible that might be relevant to your self recommendation system. So, yeah, I think basically after we understand what matters to the customers, I think again, don't chase tools, but define the process. Many teams fall into the trap of adopting shiny AI tools, but it boils down into step-by-step process. The first one is coming up with instructions or prompts. Um, Again, after that, we need to test the prompt with a decent sample data sets, including a tricky or borderline cases here. And of course, building a feedback loop um, based on the test cases that you have, log all the inputs and outputs to make your evaluation data set better and better, and turning that into feedback. And let's go into a practical strategies of how to run the experiments after we identifying the process, the tooling, and etc. etc. This is just one example of how we can improve our prompt. Of course, there's a lot of techniques, like there is a zero shot prompting, there's a few shot prompting, there's a meta prompting, but fundamentally, the important principles here is being more specific, being more clear. You need to be very, very clear on and communicating exactly what success looks like because AI is not just a perfect system. You have to be very clear on what you want it. It's basically like a junior intern that that is available 24/7. And on top of that, I think adding examples will make your results to be more comprehensive. And again, I think structure, break down complex tasks into a clear sequential steps, and put a constraint on the output. What's the tone guideline? What's the specific formats? And what's the limit of the length? And when it comes to evaluations, I know evaluation is really huge thing, but there are multiple different types of evaluations. Like the first one is a human evaluation, which is basically a human manually qualify check the quality of the data of the output of the AI system. And the second one is offline evaluation. So basically, before deploying your system into production, you run a few number of test cases to identify if the AI is hallucinating or not. And last but not least, online evaluation, which is you deploy your system to production. And for each transaction, for each process, you capture all um, the process and you measure how good the AI is. And these are just the tools that can help you to perform evaluations for each strategy. Of course, you don't have to perform all of them all the time because it's really contextual, but at least for human, it's a manual evaluations like a Google Sheet. And for offline, there's a couple of different tools like a Prompfoo that I will show you today, basically a sample configuration of how to do it properly. And the last one is OPIC, which is an online evaluation tooling. There is a real-time performance tracking, there's seamless integration to your system, and yeah, I think we're gonna go through the details for each of these tools today. And let's start with the manual, Google Sheet. So as you can see it here, on the column B, there's a different models, and the column C, there's a providers here. So essentially what this experiment does is you try multiple different prompts based on the column E. There's a detail size, there's a rough size, and for different prompts, you try to combine it with multiple providers, multiple different models, and you measure the results, which is the F. Column F is basically the duration of your AI system, and the column G is essentially just about the cost of performing an inference here. The second one is Prompfoo, which is this is related to the offline evaluation that we talked about before. And as you can see it here, there's a configuration of description, there's a configuration of prompts, there is configuration of different providers that you can test against these prompts. And there is a test cases, last but not least, which is you can insert bananas, you can insert avocado toast into your prompt, which is basically here is basically writing a tweet about a specific topic. And there's assertion here. If the value contains a specific keyword, that means that we can consider the results to be good enough. And this is an example of why Prompfoo is super powerful, which is you can run it automatically in your continuous integration platform, continuous deployment platform. You can also run it in parallel. There is a parallelism feature where you can run multiple test cases at the same time, and you can see like how many test cases are pass, how many test cases are failing, etc., etc. And yeah, I think it's really, really developer friendly, and I would really recommend running this AI system. On top of that, of course, being a developer friendly tool is really important. But again, our users are mostly like non-technical or non-developer um, people here. And it's very important to have a feature that can generate a report consistently, like as you can see it here. Promptful can generate a report based on the test cases that you ran, and you can see exactly for each output which one is failing, which one is successful, and you can see it here. For example, there's an address match with using GPT vision, and essentially what it does is it tries to matching multiple different input like address matching, like string matching, and you can see that there's a couple different configurations and different models, and you can see for each of them what's the cost, what's the duration for running the inference, and it's really, really non-developer friendly as well. And last but not least, online evaluation. And this is an tool launched by a company called Comet, which is OPIC. It's really, really simple. It's basically it's like an SDK where you can integrate um, your code into the system, and yeah, and after that, for each LLM call, AI call, um, you will come up with an automatic report for each transaction. What's the input? What are the task cases that we run for that particular transaction? And you can see like there is a score for each trace or for each process, which is correctness, for example here 0.5, hallucination 0.5, and there is a score one, which is essentially a custom scoring logic where you can also include not just the usual metrics that AI system needs, but also the custom metrics that may be relevant for your domain or vertical of your industry. And yeah, again, while evaluation tools offer like a very strong monitoring, we need to remember that the tools are only enablers. The foundation of successful AI evaluation lies in establishing a well defined process and then selecting the appropriate tools to support that methodology. So, just to conclude the presentations that we have today, I think the conclusion is in order to build a successful AI products, it has to be beyond demo magic. AI is different. The black box nature of AI system, I think it's powerful, but at the same time, it demands more rigorous process, stringent evaluation than traditional software because the results again could be different. You can repeat exactly the same prompt, but the results could be different. So it's a bit different from Albert Einstein quote here. And without that, you are without systematic evaluation, you're just hoping for the best, and you're running blindly for the system. The second one, when it comes to preventing evaluation hell, I think we need to be selective and intentional with the metrics that we wanted to have in our system. And it's not just following blindly all the public benchmark, because, for example, if you are building a AI powered search system, maybe the search is particularly for e-commerce, maybe the search is particularly for like a healthcare documents, and there is no public benchmark for healthcare document because all the public benchmark that is available is just based on a generic search. And yeah, I think you need to be more intentional again and measure what truly matters to the customers. And do remember there is no perfect model solving the wrong problem. And even if there is a perfect model that's solving the wrong problem, is still not valuable for the customer. So basically, again, before coming up with perfect solution, a perfect model, we need to be selective and intentional with the metrics that we want. We have to understand what actually matters to the customers beyond just demo magic, beyond just a solid number. And that's about it. Yeah, thanks for coming here today, and excited for you all to be more be more active in building AI beyond demo magic. Thank you.